Welcome to the SkillArbitrage YouTube channel. I am Rishita, and today we are going to dive into the dynamic world of social media advertising. Today, we have the privilege of hosting a brilliant mind which is at the helm of a cutting-edge social media management platform. Our guest is Rachin Dalal, the founder and CEO of Virality Media. It's a company which is revolutionizing the way businesses approach social media marketing. With a wealth of knowledge in his industry, our guest is here to share some invaluable insights that will empower you to harness the full potential of social media advertising and redefine your social media strategy. So, without further delay, welcome, Rachin, to the episode. So
Thank you
happy
so
and
much,
excited.
Rishita. Thank you so
And
much, Rishita, for the very warm introduction. I don't know if I deserve that much praise, but I really
oh, well,
appreciate that.
I'm sure by the end of this, everyone will agree with me that you do. Uh, I was just going
Perfect.
through your profile, Rachin, and I saw that you did your masters from Imperial College London in chemistry and molecular physics. Is that right?
Yes, yes.
Uh, okay, so how did this happen? Like from chemistry to, it's a social media management platform as an entrepreneur. It's a huge difference. It's a huge leap. So please
Absolutely.
tell us something about that.
Sure. So this actually, I have to credit it to COVID as such. COVID actually made me shift gears, so to speak. So basically, what happened was when I was studying at Imperial and I was doing chemistry, then around my end of my first year, COVID struck and I had to come back to India. I stayed there and with nothing to do and all the free time in the world, what I decided to do was start to learn a little bit about investing in the stock market. And once that happened, I got to understand a lot of different metrics about it, got to understand how things evolve in that area and things like that. And what happened was a lot of folks in my circle started reaching out to me wanting to learn about this. So what I did was I started a YouTube channel dedicated to teaching people just the very basics of stock market investing. So how do you analyze a stock? How do you understand whether something is going to go up or go down or things like that? Just a very basic fundamentals about it. So when I started doing that, actually, that's when I realized that this entire world of social media is actually very fragmented because on the one hand you have Meta with Facebook and Instagram, on the other hand you have Google with YouTube, on the other hand you have Microsoft with LinkedIn, and so on and so forth. So there's no easy way for either as a content creator doing your own kind of videos and uploading it onto social media, or if you're a small business owner trying to use social media for your own brand awareness, there's no easy tool which allows you to effectively manage this entire aspect of social media. So when I saw that as a challenge for myself just for YouTube, then I realized that this demand has to be met with, and someone has to create some kind of an easy to use, very simple, very holistic platform which allows users, whether you're a content creator or whether you're a business, to just manage everything from one place without any technical hassle. So that's how the idea of Virality Media was born. And 2 years in, doing pretty well, so to speak.
So glad to hear that. Yeah, COVID was such a time when, a lot of our lives were upended in a way. And I have learned so much
Absolutely.
personally from such wonderful content creators on YouTube and Instagram and those platforms. Yeah, thank you
True.
so much for telling us that story. It's how things have been happening since COVID.
Exactly.
So please tell us something more about what your platform does in terms of bridging that gap and changing the way that both parties, advertisers and the ones offering those services, they connect with each other. How do they harness your platform to do that?
Sure. So, a very easy example I'll give is, let's say you're a business owner. Maybe you have a cupcake shop or you have a jewelry shop, anything, right? Now, if you wanted to take a video of how you bake your cupcakes or how you make the jewelry on your own, you take the video, you edit it a little bit, and you make it nice and pretty for social media. And then once that is done, then let's say you only had to use two platforms just to make it very easy: Instagram and TikTok. Those are the two most popular platforms right now. So let's say you wanted to use that. Now, for as of now, what you would have to do is you would have to manually go into Instagram, upload your video, write down, okay, this is a video of me making the jewelry or me baking the cupcakes. You write all the captions, you write all the tags and everything, you fill in all the details, then you publish it, upload it onto Instagram. Once it's done, then you come out and do the exact same thing on TikTok. So what happens is there's this huge break in the system where you have to do the same thing over and over and repeat it. So what we figured out is most of the information which needs to be captured by social media is relatively the same. So it's the same content, it's more or less the same captions, the same tags, all of that. So instead of doing it one by one, what we decided was you do it once to our platform, you fill in everything, and then you select which channels you want it to go to, and then we distribute it from our backend side. So it makes it a lot easier to upload one video onto different platforms, whether it's Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, TikTok, any of them. Then the same thing, what we've also done is we've tried to bridge the other side, which is the analytics, which comes from the social media channels. So when you want to see how well your video has done on Instagram and on TikTok, the same kind of process again starts. You go onto Instagram and you check all how many likes, how many comments, how many views, all of that. It becomes very monotonous after a point in time. And so what we've done is we've made a very easy dashboard where you get to compare, not just see all of the analytics in one place, but you get to compare it very easily. So you can see Instagram has done this well, TikTok maybe not so, YouTube has done phenomenally well, so maybe don't have to put so much effort on YouTube, maybe more on Instagram, things like that. So basically, when we call ourselves a social media management tool, what we mean to say is we basically bridge that gap between all of these disconnects between the technologies which is there in the social media. Because especially what we've also done is we've made it very technical free. So whether you're a 5-year-old kid or whether you're an 85-year-old person wanting to use social media, you can use it just with the click of a button. It doesn't matter. You don't need to know any of the technical details of social media to use this. So it makes it a lot easier that way to just make things very easy to use and holistic.
Yes, it does. It does sound very holistic and pretty simple to use. And I had never thought of it that way, that, this goes into influencer marketing or social media marketing, managing
Absolutely.
all these different platforms. Wonderful product. So speaking of advertising, we talk a lot about personalized advertising or targeted advertising. How
Absolutely.
important is it to narrow down your target audience to create these social media ad campaigns in terms of, say, engagement and conversion rate?
Right. It's a very good question, Rishita. So for uh, narrowing your target demographic, it's actually very important in the sense that what happens is not just you get better engagements or conversion rates, but what also happens is you start to build trust with your audience, which is one of the most rarest commodities in this world of social media, if I were to say, because nowadays what happens is, first of all, there are so many creators around the world. There are so many businesses around the world. You cannot support everyone. You cannot support every creator. You cannot support every business. So what happens is you have to earn their trust. You have to earn their um, engagement rate as well as their retention. So nowadays people's attention span is decreasing very, very rapidly. So maybe about 10 years ago people would be willing to sit and watch maybe a 10-minute 15-minute YouTube video. Now people give up even if you see an Instagram reel for 15 seconds. So the
Yes.
attention span has actually shortened in these past couple of years. So it makes it a lot more important to actually make sure that when you're trying to build that trust with your audience, you have to build it in a very organic way. So when you try and target your demographic and your audience, what happens is you're making that one-to-one connection, so to speak. So for me, I would want to connect with businesses who have a lot of who don't have rather a lot of social media expertise but want to get it. So for
Mhm.
me, I have to build that relationship with those small businesses so that they understand what virality media does for them, because it's not, at the end of the line, it's not just what they are giving you, it's also what you're giving them, which a lot of people don't really seem to balance that. So, for a content creator and for a business, it's very important to understand that it's a two-way street. You have to give and you have to take. So, in that sort of sense, it's very important to make that relationship with almost each and every of your audience member.
Yeah, that is true. Long-term engagement, it is built on trust. Very important, especially with this. We have so much going on every day, reducing attention spans, yes, but then also the sort of our circle in which we exist, it's expanding
Absolutely.
exponentially. The barrage of news and advertisements and brands and products and trends that we keep getting bombarded with every time we open our phone, so important
Absolutely.
for, yeah, any new brand or even an established brand to, yeah,
Exactly.
target. Yeah. So
And
it's,
the point you
mm,
made is very true. Sorry, go ahead.
no, please, I wanted you to continue. Yeah.
No, so the point you made about not just the new brands, but the existing and the established brands, they also actually, if you see, more than ever, it's the established brands who are pushing the boundaries of social media advertising, because they have built their audience into maybe millions, tens of millions, hundreds of millions, but to keep them hooked, to try and get them back to the table, whether you're a real estate business, whether you're a fast food business, whether you're a jewelry business, whatever kind of business you are, the established ones are now making more and more of an effort because they realize that having that trust with your audience makes it a lot more easier to actually get that relationship and get them to come back to you over and over again.
Very interesting. Could you give us an example of a social media ad campaign run by a big established brand that pushed boundaries that you said, you know, or a campaign that you personally loved that was so well crafted? I would love to hear about such a campaign.
Sure. So there are a few of them which I got. One of them was actually McDonald's, if I want to take as an established brand. They've been doing very well in terms of invoking nostalgia more than anything else. So one of the campaigns which I think was done just around COVID only 2020 is they showed a picture of a child watching through the car window the sign of M for McDonald's. So that was something that invokes nostalgia, because ever since they started up in the mid 1960s, their one and only thing was that you take your family out for a meal, for a lunch, for a dinner, and you get to enjoy that entire day. And especially McDonald's at that time, they revolutionized the business of fast food, that you don't have the plates, the silverware, the cutlery. So you can just take the bag, go to a park, go to a movie theater, go to a mall, anywhere. And that was the nostalgia which they were trying to bring out every single time. So whether it was that ad campaign, or there was another ad campaign when they started Mac delivery for
Mhm.
when COVID and everything was shut down. They started Mac delivery and they promoted it very, very much, in the sense that you get that McDonald's feeling at your home rather than going out and going to a McDonald's store or going anywhere. You get it now at home. So I think McDonald's in that way has done a phenomenal job of actually invoking that nostalgia in their audience and also asking them to come back to them again and again. So that one campaign I've really loved and I've really enjoyed seeing. And I'm always excited to see what more they come up with.
Wonderful. So this one was where they harnessed or leveraged nostalgia. They relied on the legacy of the brand, the decades of what they've built. What are certain other examples? Say we spoke about an established brand running a campaign like this.
Right.
Uh, so another campaign, not necessarily by an established brand, but something similar where they leveraged something else and created a campaign that was a success.
Okay, I have a very good example for that. I actually met with the person who used to run all of the marketing for that company. It's called Innocent Drinks. It's very popular in the UK, in the US, and even in India, it's starting to come. So what they do is they actually kind of invoke the funny aspect behind their brand. So, for example, one of the recent ones they came up with a blue colored drink, which was called Bolt from the Blue. And it was filled with blueberries and vitamins and things like that. So it's a very good, healthy drink. And the problem was what they did was the packaging and the label and the drink itself, it wasn't really blue, it was kind of greenish. So they took to social media and they said, here's our new blue drink, full caps, everything. So they were like, this is our new blue colored drink, blue flavored, everything. And people started bombarding them with comments saying, no, this is green. And they're like, no, I think it's blue. No, it's green. It's green at the most. No, it's a little blue if you want to push it that way. No, it's greenish blue. So that constant back and forth, especially on Twitter, now called X,
Uh-huh.
but they took that by storm. It went viral. It got millions and millions of views. A lot of people commented on it because what they did was they wanted people to engage with the post, trying and bringing them to the table and saying, why do you believe it's not blue? Why do you think it's green? Why do you think it's any other color? So I think what they tried and played on was the fact that when you kind of have some kind of attachment to that, whether it's a post, whether it's the drink itself, then it actually encourages you to try and find out what is good with it, what is bad with it, something like that. So in that way, it was a really nice campaign because it really underlined the fact that people are always looking for something funny. They're not always serious. Like social media is always as an escape from real life as such. So when you play on that, then it really makes it a good deal.
That is true. We don't go to social media to, get more stressed about stuff. It's good to have some fun.
Exactly.
And this sort of ad campaign reminds me of certain campaigns that have happened in the past that were very controversial when they came out without
Oh yeah.
naming names. And there was a rapper and there was a right, and then
Yep.
and it got people talking so much, and
I
a
know.
lot of people were very offended, but it got so much engagement, and the
Absolutely.
price, right, the product sold for a premium.
Exactly.
So it's very brilliant. It's very interesting to think about. Do you remember any such campaign do you want to talk about where they have done something similar or fun or different or weird or with a twist for their
Hmm.
advertisements?
Uh, I would have to think about it because unfortunately, what has happened is a lot of established brands are trying to stick towards being in the same kind of format, if I were to say, in terms of their social media advertising. They don't really try and experiment. It's usually the startups which really experiment on their social media marketing. And that's what brings out the creativity because you get to see things which you've never really seen before, as such. Um, Off the top of my head, nothing is really coming to me as of now, but there have been a few which I have seen on and off. One of them, it's not exactly a very well established brand, I would say, maybe, but Maybelline, they came out with something very interesting in UK when they started a new line of, I think, eyeliner or mascara or something, I don't know. But they did something very interesting where they put like a fake eyelash on top of the London buses and the tubes. And
Ah,
when it would stop in some particular stop or the other, there would be like a brush right there, and it would just brush over the eyelashes. And
yeah.
those are the kind of experimental, thought-invoking social media marketing which you should do, because that gets someone to think about your product, not just say it in plain bold words, oh, this is what we do, this is what we are. It makes users think about it and then actually track them. Yeah,
Nice.
so that was something that was very interesting.
Yeah, that sounds so creative, right? Using these kind of props for advertising, yes, and getting the
Exactly.
buzz going on social media. So now that we're speaking about these lessons that we can learn from these ad campaigns, right? That it should get people talking. It shouldn't just tell people what to think, but rather, make them think on their own. So,
Right.
in order to build such successful ad campaigns that remains in the psyche of the consumer for a long time, or which shapes how the industry evolves, um, what are certain elements that go into creating such successful campaigns? What are those things that advertisers, and you have to keep that in mind?
Right. So in that sense, actually, I would say there are maybe two elements, I would say
Mm-hmm.
maybe. So the first element is invoking something in the subconscious of your users. So, for example, when I talked about the McDonald's adverts, they invoked nostalgia because they knew that they were building on decades long tradition of getting families to eat outside and make it like a family meal, and a family day out. So they invoked nostalgia. Innocent drinks, they invoked the funny sort of engagements from the users. So I think what is the most important is trying and invoking a feeling which stays in the subconscious of your users and your audience. Because what happens is that then they start to think about it, they start to wonder about it while they're walking on the road. If something reminds them of it, then they keep on thinking about that again. So that is something that you really need to have inside your brand value and your brand vision, because it needs to always stick with your audience, because unless you make that connection with your audience, they're not going to really remember you, they're not going to try and tell someone else about it, and that's not really how you are able to get your brand to grow bigger and reach more people. So I think that's the first element of actually making people connect with your brand and connect between behind the ideology behind your brand. So that is the first element, I would say. And then the second element is actually trying and being more experimental when you're being creative. So a lot of people actually don't really, when they're being creative, they don't really try and experiment as much, especially with the existing and the established brands, like I mentioned, because they're more afraid to change as such, because they don't know whether their audience will accept it or not, which is a fair point. But what I feel is by experimenting and by giving different kind of choices to your audience, what happens is they start to actually gravitate more towards a certain kind of feeling which is being invoked, and maybe not so for another one. So you get to know where you are able to actually essentially make that connection with your audience. So I feel like that is why startups, more than anyone else, especially the guys and girls, sorry, who work in the marketing sector for the startups, I think they are doing some wonderful work because they actually invoke that kind of feeling within the users, which most of the established brands aren't really able to do. So that is why they try and persist in terms of their marketing. But the startups ones, they're actually very subliminal, very not heavy hitting, but they actually stay in your subconscious a lot longer. So I think that is something which is just really nice in that way.
Yeah. Makes sense. Yes, those two things that you mentioned definitely really important. And I'm sorry, that's I think the fire alarm.
No, that's fine.
Uh, I wanted to talk about what are some of the ethical considerations that we must keep in mind while processing, say, consumer data or narrowing down a target audience or planning a campaign. Any of those things. What are some
Right.
of the ethical considerations?
That's actually a very interesting question because it depends on your definition of ethical boundaries, if I want to say it that way, because now in this day and age, a lot of things have actually become a debate in the ethics boundaries, so to speak. So what happens is sometimes one kind of person or one kind of sector or community as such, community what happens is for them it might be okay, it might be fine, it's not infringing on anything they feel is anything valuable to them. And then on the other hand, there's maybe another person or another sector or another community who actually takes offense in that. So I think in terms of the ethical reasons behind doing advertising, what you need to keep in mind is who exactly are your target audience. Like, if you're so for me, for example, I would be targeting most of the small businesses. So I can't really play on the emotions of how I can make their business 10 times bigger, let's say, right? I can't give such kind of bold proclamations because that is not something we are even in the sphere of, right? So, in terms of the ethicals, it has to be something where you're making sure your target audience is defined within your brand perspective. So, when you know what kind of feelings and thoughts you want to invoke in your audience, then you have to make sure that you're considering all the ethicals and all the unethicals in that sense. So I think that's how it is. It's a very tricky field to play at because something which is ethical or even moral for someone may not be for another person. So, in that sense, it's very tricky. And nowadays, everyone takes offense at anything anyone says, as such. So, it's like, I guess the main thing is that you try and understand who you're connecting with.
I agree with that. Yeah, with the amount of information already, it's very hard
And
once.
misinformation. And
Yeah,
misinformation. That's also a very unfortunate side of that. Yeah,
yeah, absolutely. Have to be careful. And like you said, what's moral for me may not be moral for somebody else. So have to be very careful about those things. But it's a very tricky situation for anybody to be in. Um,
exactly.
speaking of social media advertising, could you talk to us a little bit about how it has evolved in the recent times and what do you see the future trends being? Any future opportunities or challenges you see?
Interesting. Yeah. So, in terms of what has been changing for in the advertising field for the past maybe 10 years, I would say 10 years, 15 years, is that what people are now seeming to realize is that going in one format for advertising is not actually something that works most of the times. So, for example, a lot of people are now starting to experiment, like I had mentioned earlier. A lot of people are starting to experiment with their social media advertising. They're trying to figure out things which works with their audience, which don't, and then effectively working on the things that do work. And what a lot of people are now starting to find out is that actually it's not about the advertising really that is pushing the boundaries of your brand awareness. It's more of what the advertisement is actually in capturing in terms of your audience perspective. So when you're able to connect with your audience, I know I say it a lot, but connecting with your audience is something which is really fundamental to building that brand, because what happens is that when you're able to effectively build that brand awareness within your users and within your audience, then it makes it a lot easier for you to actually advertise to folks who are not part of that, because you understand what is the psyche behind the audience who are already attached to you. And then it makes it easier to actually bring out that advertisements, trying and targeting people who have heard of your brand, who may not have heard of your brand, and wanting to know about it. So I think those are the kind of dynamics that goes on there. In the past 10 years, people are starting to see that shift. They're trying and focusing more on the ideals behind the advertisements rather than the advertisements alone. Now, in terms of the future, um, I hope I'm not Nostradamus and whatever I say actually does become true. But in terms of the future, what I would say is that what people are now gravitating towards is that it's becoming more about connecting one on one with your audience, especially with the attention span decreasing day by day. What people are now trying to find is alternative methods of trying and reaching out to audience. So now social media isn't really the only avenue for advertisements, which a lot of people are now using. It's now becoming, they're going a little back to basics. So a little bit about newsletters, a little bit about blogs, about emails, and things like that. Social media has become a huge factor in that. But what people are now trying to figure out is trying and branching that out to try and see how many people they can actually engage with and try and bring aboard. So I think in terms of the future, that's where it's going to go. It's going to go more in terms of spreading it out and trying and seeing different avenues of how you are able to reach your audience. I would still say social media is the best because that's what my business is based on. So I hope people still use my platform rather than anything else. But yeah, that's where I kind of see the future going as such.
And that's not a bad future. That's a nice future. It's not going anywhere. Social media marketing is here to stay. And we all,
Absolutely.
yeah. Rachin, thank you so much for your time. I had a couple of more questions for you. I had a lot of fun
Sure.
talking to you about the ads, but I'm so sorry. We have the fire alarm going on and it's not in
Oh,
drill
no, that's
apparently.
fine.
So I'm going to,
Oh, my.
man, catch up
You'll
later,
have to
I guess.
exit. Oh,
I
no,
got
that's
that.
perfectly all right.
This is strange. I'm
Hopefully, it's
so
not too big a
sorry.
fire.
I,
No, that's
I, I
fine. I
really hope
guess,
someone's just, yeah, someone's just making parathas. I hope nothing else.
yeah, I guess they made sure that that's the next advertising they're saying. Don't make too many parathas, otherwise, the building will go on fire.
Yeah, and yeah, that is true. But I really do hope to catch up with you sometime and continue
No,
this.
absolutely.
This
Absolutely.
is
And
great.
we can find another topic as well to broaden this conversation, because I think this was a really good talking point. I really enjoyed speaking with you also, Rishita. It was really nice to give a little bit of my knowledge, how much ever limited it was. And yeah, hopefully it would be great to involve some new folks as well and get the conversation flowing once again.
That is so wonderful. Thank you so much. I'll get back to you on this. And in the meantime, to
Absolutely.
everyone who's watching us, this is Skill Arbitrage. I am Rishita. This is Rachin, CEO and founder of Virality Media. And we were just talking about social media advertising on the Skill Arbitrage YouTube channel. I'll see you guys next Thursday. And bye bye, Rachin. See you.
Bye, Rishita. See you soon.